I'm going to take like a 3-minute break just to go downstairs. I have somebody dropping something off.
Okay, that'll
But
work.
moving on.
Okay.
Good
Well,
job,
we are
Angela.
recording, and Wisdom of the Wilderness once again.
Cool. All right. So, welcome everyone to another session of Wisdom of the Wilderness. I am Jake, your wilderness guide. And we left off last time on page 128. And I'm going to start off there. So everybody turn to page 128. And I believe it was, I had a cave in mind, a rock overhang, a place out of the wind where I could sit and empty my mind. I suppose I'll never learn that such intentions almost never come true. God in the wild is full of surprises and seems to love it immensely. I could not find a cave or an overhang anywhere, and I did not want to spend the whole day slipping and sliding around the hillside. So I settled myself against the flat, upright rock that at least shielded me from the wind. I placed my plastic ground cloth on the snow next to the rock and sat down cross-legged next to my backpack. Here I am. Thoughts that had paused during the climb uphill now recovered their strength and hit me with renewed ugliness. All my faults, my total inability to do anything right. I looked around, wanting to find something healing in the trees, in the snow, in the distant sound of a waterfall. But there was nothing except cold. Cold seeped up through the plastic into my body. I prayed for relief, for peace. It started to snow again. The hard, freezing, sleety snow that makes cracking sounds as it strikes you. The wind picked up and shifted around to catch me from the north. I was going to freeze there. I got up and started to move again. I quit worrying about what to do, just followed my feet, and must have walked nearly another mile in the snowfall, beyond the sound of water into the barren trees. Because I was no longer trying for anything, a pace of walking came to me, a gait not antagonistic to the hillside, a rhythm compatible, even harmonious with the snow and my cowboy boots and my out-of-shape heart and lungs. So that's, remember, he's wearing these slippery cowboy boots. That's right. He's trying to be like John Travolta in what was it, Urban Cowboy? As I walked, my mind stopped harassing itself and peacefulness came again. A peacefulness born of the sweet absence of harsh thoughts and the perfect presence of everything around me just being. Such times just happen. There's no way to make them happen. All you can do, I guess, is put yourself in places where they might happen. Want them enough so that the wanting becomes a prayer, even if you can't pray it, and just do what comes naturally. I found myself on a gentler path that led me gradually down one hillside and very slowly up another, deeper into the trees that were blurred by snowflakes, yet still stark skeletons of black and gray and winter emptiness. The park people had marked the trail with pink paint on the tree trunks. I had no idea where the path went, needed no thought of where I was going. There were no other footprints. I was alone. The falling ice snow had formed a crust that crunched with each step. A memory came, or a series of them, of walking in the snow in Michigan when I was a teenager. It was colder there, and the snow creaked more than crunched, and my inner feeling was different too. Then it seemed I was always going someplace, always doing something. Now, thank God, I was going no place, doing nothing, just walking, being. A gift sense of freedom came, a blessing moment of presence without agenda or intention. There's a famous Buddhist saying actually, and it's being no one, going nowhere. So when he says I was going no place, doing nothing, there's a being no one, going nowhere. I got a little high from it. And this is the time before marijuana was legal too. Intoxicated with freedom and emptiness. 131. It wasn't quite joy, but it was close. I thought I heard something in the wind. It sounded like children laughing. It was children laughing, real children, a lot of real children. I couldn't see them yet, but they were coming toward me fast, a horde. Like everything, the laughter of children is what you make of it. If you're in the right frame of mind, it's music. When you're trying to concentrate on something else, it's noise. If your mood is right on the edge of depression, as mine was, and you're just beginning to feel a bit of precious freedom in the silence of snow falling in sweet, abandoned aloneness, then the laughter of children could be the most repulsive sound in the universe. I desperately wanted to get away from those kids, get out of sight. To the east was a long, flat expanse of snow and boulders among the trees. Nothing for me there. To the west, the hillside rose abruptly, but a tiny lavender marked trail indicated it must be passable, at least in good weather. I took off, leaving interesting cowboy boot tracks in the snow. Puffing up the hill, I glanced off to my right, behind a fallen tree, and saw, yes, it was a cave, just the sort of thing I'd started out looking for. I had to climb under the horizontal tree trunk, and again found myself stumbling and scrambling, pitting myself against the landscape. Clumsily, I made it into the little hole in the hill. It was formed by boulders right, left, and above, and there was just enough room for me to sit on a rock with my feet stretched out to rest on another rock. I could look out from this tiny cavern, over the fallen tree that hid its entrance, down upon the trail I had been walking. It was, I realized then, another perfection, and one I would never have found had I not been escaping the oncoming sounds of the children. They came, looking down the hillside from my hidden spot. I could see there were about 15 of them, maybe 7 to 10 years old, boys and girls, poor kids, poorly clothed, probably brought out from the inner city by some organization for a weekend of winter camping at Cunningham Falls. There was one adult with them, a shepherd with his flock of sheep gone wild. The kids were everywhere. One little boy headed up toward me, calling out to a friend that he had found a trail. He got within 50 feet of me when the adult called him back. I heard him mutter, "Shit." And I wondered briefly what he would have thought and what I would have done if he'd stumbled upon me in my little cave. I guess I would have said hi. As he trudged back down the trail, I noticed he was wearing sneakers, cold, wet sneakers in the snow. Better traction than my cowboy boots, but his feet must have been freezing. He was as steady as a mountain goat on that hillside. I decided I liked him a lot. The children moved erratically down the trail below me, shouting and laughing. Once I realized I was not going to be seen, I began to like the sound of their voices. It blended in amazing harmony with the sweet crackle of the snow and the wind, with the occasional song of a bird. He was right that the children were there. They were as much a part of the mountainside as the trees and I were, and it was good. I realized how quickly my feelings toward them had changed. Mood, or is it attitude, colors everything. And moods and attitudes shift like the wind. I'm old enough now not to take them too seriously. The sounds of the children's voices grew fainter in the snow, and the snow grew heavier, and the heaviness of it lay on the trees and the rocks. It made me feel somehow protected. But I had been sitting very still for a long time and the cold had gotten into my bones. I opened my backpack and took out a little can of Sterno and set it in a hole in the rock beneath my legs. It took a couple of matches to get it lit because my hands were shaking now with the coldness. Then the warmth came up under my knees and I took off my sodden gloves and warmed my hands, and there was another moment of perfection. How arbitrary they are, those moments. How transient. As soon as I realized I could stay warm, negativity started to rise again. I think it began with wondering how I would spend my time now that I had found a perfect place in which to spend it. It wasn't even noon yet. I had the better part of a day ahead of me, not worrying about survival and what I would do. That's always a treacherous question for me. What shall I do? It presumes I should be doing something, which is a mistake to begin with. So it set off those awful doing thoughts about myself again, how I'd failed at doing so many things, disappointed so many people. I tried to pray a little, tried to empty my mind, tried to think of myself being empty, tried to get comfortable in my little rocky cave space, tried to quit trying. The thoughts were beginning to wear me down. I'm really no good, never have been. I'm a fake, a sorrowful charade of a person. God help me. My perfect spot was becoming a prison of stone and snow. And I thought briefly, I'll just split out of here, climb out and slide down the path and stumble back to the car and drive on home and have a couple of drinks and maybe things will be better tomorrow. But then the sun crisped itself through a break in the clouds. And though it was still snowing, there were shafts of light, incredibly brilliant upon and within the trees, and my eyes were taken into the forest beneath me. A flutter of red and black off to the left, smacking up against a worm-eaten, storm-damaged tree. It was a pileated woodpecker, the kind you hear in the forest that sound like jackhammers. They're all big, but this one was huge, a crimson-capped monster who just sat there upright on the tree trunk, being beautiful in the snow and the bright sun rays. Why, I wonder to the bird, are you here at all? What grubs or beetles do you hope to find in that midwinter tree? What do you think you are doing? But he only sat there or perched there or whatever they do when they've adhered themselves to the side of an old tree. Looking left and right, he just hung on the dead bark, being nothing but beautiful. The tree, I noticed, was wholly and completely dead. Not just winter dead, winter still like the other trees around, but finally and substantially dead, dead for years. Its limbs were gray and full of holes, its branches broken, its bark shredded and nearly gone. Its trunk bald, decomposed. It was a corpse of a tree. And it would not turn green when spring came. It would never, ever be green again. Yeah, I thought to the tree, I know what it's like. Done your best and it wasn't good enough. Old and rotten to the core. Decaying, ugly. But as soon as the thought passed, I realized the tree was not ugly at all. Its gray deadness bleached out against the snow and flecked against the darker black live trees and formed a counterpoint to the white, black, red of the bird and was perfect. Then I looked where the woodpecker was looking, toward the south, and there were empty skeleton trees there and evergreen pines. And when I looked at the trees as individuals, I saw all the imperfections of them. Each was broken here and there. All had branches cracked by winds and ice. Some split down the middle by lightning. Many bore the scars of disease, blighted spots, knots and burls and parasite vines upon them. broken, wounded, growing this way and that, all with their injuries of the years and their imperfections of birth and growth. And yet all were absolutely perfect as they were. I thought just a little about perfection. I didn't become philosophical about it. It was just that I had seen, when I looked where the pileated woodpecker was looking, that perfection is just another sensation determined by my mood, impermanent, transient, depending on my frame of mind. Every single one of those trees, however damaged and diseased and disfigured, was absolutely perfect in its own right, in its own place, there in the snow on the hillside. And it was quite natural then to see myself like a tree, imperfect in so many ways, and yet somehow, seen with the eyes of beauty, absolutely perfect. Oh God, you woodpecker God, you answered my prayer. You silly, terrific, whoever you are, you funny, wonderful being at the heart of me and everything. I cannot help but love you. You know that. The woodpecker flew away to another dead, crumbling tree, as if to underscore his point. And I knew then that the woodpecker was God's being, like the trees and the children were God's being, like I am God's being, a sweetness of life. You know, it's interesting because he's very good at bringing you into his changing point of view, moods and everything. But he's also very good at unattaching to these moods so that he can continue to experience the present as it unfurls before him, instead of staying entrenched in that. And that's why the book it breathes so easily, because he keeps unfurling the moment. He doesn't get stuck in moments. He enters into a moment, but he always finds his way out of the tributary back into the river. I sat gazing into the imperfect, perfect trees until the sun moved beyond the hilltop above me, and the cold penetrated my bones, and even the hot chocolate that took nearly half an hour to get warm on my sterno wouldn't warm me. It was time to go home. I pried myself out of the little cave and stretched my joints. It was the end of the day, and I was soporific, floating in a sea of snow and coldness and the beauty of all imperfections, sliding along the trail in my cowboy boots. About halfway back to the car, I heard the sound of the children laughing and shouting. They were coming down a side trail that joined mine right behind me. They were moving faster than I was because they had sneakers in the snow and all I had was my cowboy boots. And once again, I felt I had to elude them. I tried to run, fell, scrambled, stumbled, slipped, and scurried down the trail, keeping ahead of their laughing sounds. But this time, it wasn't desperate. It was delightful. Toward the end of the trail, wheezing with my heart thumping like it wasn't going to beat much longer, I skidded one last time and slid down the whole last 30 feet of the hillside on my rump, laughing and hoping the little darlings couldn't see me being such a fool. No more thoughts of outdoor woodsman Jerry. I was just being there, running ahead of the kids and not caring too much, really, if they came up on me. And for all that I could have been a pileated woodpecker. When I got back to the car, way ahead of the kids, panting and exhausted and feeling just wonderful in all my imperfection, I tossed my backpack and walking stick in through the little back window and climbed in and peeled off my boots and socks soaked with snowmelt. I put the key in the ignition and hauled back on the four-wheel drive shift and it was broken. The car wouldn't go into four-wheel drive. And so I couldn't feel so potent anymore. But the roads were clear enough, and the two-wheel drive worked well enough, and everything was perfect. Beautiful little section. So I am going to go downstairs now. Just take a 5-minute break. I just have to receive something, and I will be back.
We can get back to the show.
Alan, could you move the
Yep,
cushion?
I sure can.
I know you love it in the middle of the screen.
All right, so now we will begin chapter 8, and which is called The Name of the Eagle. And the quote from St. John of the Cross is, "I went out seeking love, and with unfaltering hope I flew high, so high, that I overtook the prey." The bird who guided me through my perfection lessons was Dryocopus pileatus, a pileated woodpecker. That's what we have named him, for his bright red pilus, or cap, and his habit of pecking wood. According to the book of Genesis, we can call him anything we want, for we human beings are the namers of all creation. I don't believe it for a minute, but Genesis says God gave us this power as a sign of our dominion over the earth and its creatures. If it wasn't obvious before, it is now. I don't believe in the inerrancy of Scripture, and in some cases like this one, I believe in its errancy. I wonder how responsible those Genesis writers are for our current feeling of separation from nature, with their notions of a transcendent God creating us out of the earth and then telling us to subjugate it. I suspect the delusion goes deeper than their writings, though, and that they were simply reinforcing a larger cultural animosity toward nature. They were right about one thing, though. We are namers. We cannot help ourselves. We are compelled to name everything. Everything we encounter, every experience we have, every perception, feeling, we must call it by a name. If we do not know the name, we create one. We cannot bear the nameless. When faced with the nameless, we feel vulnerable, out of control. As physicians have always known, naming is reassuring. What you have, says the doctor, is idiopathic dysfunctionality.
He doesn't know either, but it sounds good.
The diagnosis means something is wrong, but no one knows what it is, what caused it, or what can be done about it. That's it. That's going to be my new favorite phrase whenever somebody's bothering me. You know, you got idiopathic dysfunctionality. What does that mean? I don't know, but you have it. Still, the patient is consoled. Even such a meaningless name gives at least the illusion of control. And when we are able to name a thing meaningfully, we feel a kind of power over it. All too often, naming is truly a sign of subjugation. Masters name their slaves, owners name their pets, bigots name their enemies, angry children call each other names. To name in this way is to try to possess, conquer, or control. There are, of course, many ways of naming that convey respect and even reverence, but these are also acts of power. They are always the choice of the namer. The still more respectful way is not to give a name, but to discover it. But even learning a being's true name is to claim some of its power, to grasp something of its soul. On a summer Sunday morning in the place of fields and meadows, long after I had tried to draw the great matriarch tree against the sunrises, I returned and sat beneath her intricate branches. This time I had brought along my field guide to American trees. I tried to find her species, but identifying her was as difficult as drawing her had been. The smooth oblong shape of her alternate leaves, her deep, rough bark, and her huge size fit no description in my book. I gave up that day, aware of a subtle uneasiness. Later, I asked a friend for help in identifying the tree, and I consulted other books. Finally, I found it. Black tupelo, black gum, sorghum, Nyssa sylvatica. That's what the tree had to be. Everything fit except for the tree's giant size. She is simply an unusually large specimen. I stood beneath her then, knowing her name, and felt a gaping, painful distance between myself and the tree. Something had changed. Something had been lost. Something was wounded. I felt sorrow, and I sensed she had somehow done her best to resist the naming in the same way I believed she moved her branches when no one was looking. She must have known what the naming would do. Section is called Franklin Trees. Plants and other creatures are often named in honor of their discoverers or of other dignitaries. A creature, without being asked, becomes forever dedicated to the one for whom it is named. So it was with the ladybug, named in the Middle Ages for the mother of Jesus. Such was also the case of the Franklin tree, Franklinia alatamaha, named for Benjamin Franklin by the Philadelphia botanist who discovered it. Years ago, when they dammed the river to form the reservoir near my home, the northernmost waters flooded over the remains of an abandoned mill town. On rare occasions, when the water level is very low, you can still see the submerged walls of buildings where people once lived and worked. The old road to the village still exists, now running directly into the water as a boat launch. 100 yards west of the launch is a tiny stream coming from a spring that once provided drinking water for the townspeople. It was along this stream that I first encountered the Franklin trees. You'd probably not notice Franklin trees in winter and spring, but in late summer and early fall, when other trees are thinking about retiring, these erupt in a profusion of blooms. Their blossoms are like miniature magnolias with soft white pink shells of beauty that open and then fall upon the grass and upon the asphalt of the parking lot that has been built there. When you come close to them on an early September morning when the air is still, their fragrance sweeps you into itself. It is not an aroma to be sniffed and commented upon. It simply absorbs you and makes you beautiful. The blossoms are very delicate. You can pick one up from the ground and it will open itself to you as you turn it in your hands. The texture is so creamy, you almost have to touch the petals to your cheek, slide them across your lips. It is the most sensual flower I have ever known. Near the trees stand two carved signs. One commemorates the submerged mill town and the still flowing spring. The other announces that this species of trees is one of the rarest ornamentals in the country, and that they were named in honor of Benjamin Franklin. I know no more about the trees, but I do know something about Benjamin Franklin. I know he was a great innovator, writer, and statesman. I know his attitude toward Native Americans in the wilderness was malignant. I also know he wanted the national bird of the United States to be the turkey. That would be a very interesting symbol of the country, the turkey.
I know. It fits us right now.
John Steinbeck in Travels with Charlie, which I did read here a couple times, has a wonderful chapter about running into a bunch of turkeys, and I believe it was either Wisconsin or Minnesota. And he says they are the worst kind of creature. The turkey, not the wild turkey, but the cultivated, turkey that ends up on the platter. But let's see what Gerald May has to say about it. Turkeys. That was a great slang term growing up too. That guy's a turkey.
Yeah, that's right.
That's an old school. My grandfather used to say that. That guy's a turkey. Some creatures are named for their place of origin, like African elephants and Canada geese. Oh yeah, maybe the turkey's from Istanbul. No, I'm just kidding. This can be a respectful way of naming if we get it right. As Benjamin Franklin knew, the turkey is a completely American bird. But for some reason, the original namer of the turkey thought it came from the country of Turkey. The association with the country is now long forgotten, and the name turkey has become synonymous with silliness and stupidity. Except for its association with a fine brand of bourbon, a wild turkey, there you go. The turkey has become a joke of a bird in the national psyche. This is not the fault of the naming, but of our actual subjugation of the animal. We have completely bred away all wildness and cunning in domesticated turkeys, the one raised for dinners, so that they are indeed silly and stupid. Occasionally you read about them escaping, running, flapping, and gobbling through a town, and the citizens chase them, and the whole adventure is hilarious. But once on the forested mountain, I glimpsed wild turkeys moving gently through the underbrush. There were 3 of them, I think, a male and 2 hens, but I am not certain, nor do I know how long they had been there, utterly silent. Before my eyes sensed a hint of their movement. They appeared much like the domesticated breed, yet darker. The males waddled dusky red, subdued. They moved with such silent steadiness and grace that they seemed almost to flow through brush and branches. I reached for my camera, and they were gone. No flurry, no rush, no evidence of panic, not even a sound. They had simply disappeared. Afterward, there was one word in my mind: dignity. But it is still the pitiful, stupid, domesticated food bird that the name turkey brings to mind for most people. As the saying goes, it's hard to soar like an eagle when you're working with turkeys. Yeah. That could define our Congress.
Right.
Most people in the United States are very grateful to have the bald eagle instead of the turkey as their national symbol. As I understand it, the name of the eagle has very simple origins. Its roots go back to agua, the Latin word for water. Many eagles, including the species that became the national symbol, make their homes along watersides. Perhaps such simple naming allows us to appreciate a creature more for what it truly is. Whatever the reason, the majesty of an eagle soaring through the sky transcends all naming. It is not surprising that the eagle has become such a symbol of dignity, such an archetype of freedom. To be sure, we have damaged eagles in many ways, hunting them for feathers, destroying their habitats, allowing pesticides to soften their eggs. For a while, almost driving even the bald eagles to extinction. but we have not impugned their dignity by naming. And thank God we have not domesticated them. I have encountered 4 eagles in the wild, 2 golden eagles at a distance, 2 bald eagles up close. I much preferred the golden eagles at a distance, so I will tell that story first. Golden eagles. All right, there will be a special bonus prize if anybody can tell me the university that's nickname for their athletic teams is the Golden Eagles without looking at a phone.
New Mexico?
No, that's the Lobos.
Anyone else?
This is my one talent, that I know all the nicknames of all Division I sports teams' mascots.
New Mexico?
What was it?
New Mexico?
No, that's the Lobos. So, in other words, the Wolves.
I'm thinking Alaska.
Alaska? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I'm down.
They're the Sea Wolves. The most famous alumni of this school is Brett Favre. It is the University of Southern Mississippi. I used to bartend when I was younger, and I would in college towns to make money to keep living nomadically. And of course, his fraternity guys would come in with their parents' credit cards and open tabs. And as they got drunker and more obnoxious, I would find ways of taking their money from them. So I would bet them $1 a nickname, right? And so they'd start off with, like, University of Michigan, Wolverines, right? Duke, Blue Devils, North Carolina Tar Heels. But then they'd try to trip me up. But eventually they'd owe me like $79, and they'd be like, I'm not going to pay you. I'm like, that's all right. I already put it on your dad's credit card, so you don't have to worry about it. So, University of Southern Mississippi, Golden Eagles is the next chapter, and it is not about Brett Favre. It is the 3rd day of my week-long solitude retreat in the Jemez Mountains of New Mexico in the summer of 1993. I am sitting on the deck of a small cabin, and I am well into the silence, absorbed by the majesty of the mesas to the east and west, my awareness swallowed into limitless vistas of desert where the canyon opens in the south. As I so often do when it is totally unnecessary, I am trying to meditate. Why, when everything around me is perfect and I am immersed in the moment, do I still think I must do something to be contemplative? That is a great, great lesson for people too. I lead a lot of spiritual retreats, and people always say, what do I have to do to meditate? I'm like, just be here. Then you could be making a pizza, sweeping the floor, chopping firewood, picking your nose, and you're meditating. It is always only by a gift that I am allowed to just be. Left to my own devices, I will always be trying to do something, even if what I am trying to do is nothing. It's a great, great line. Nothing is what I am trying to do as the morning sunlight flows down the side of the western mesa. I sit cross-legged on a Navajo rug, back straight, breathing in the high desert air that is like wakefulness itself. My eyes are slightly open, seeing but not really looking at the endless desert. A soft, silent prayer arises. I am yours. There is stillness all around, but I know I'm trying too hard, working at something, holding something somewhere. I try to relax everything, surrender myself completely, but that too is trying. Then I hear the eagles call. I do not know it as eagle yet, but it is a cry that pierces me once, twice, 3 times a lady. No, I'm just kidding. A 3rd time, going directly into my heart, into the very center of my longing. It is as if that center of me had suddenly shrieked out of itself, crying into the empty mountain air, echoing back and forth between the high mesa walls. My head turns to the sound, and there I see 2 slowly forming forms above the mesa. black against the utterly clean blue sky, high above the great red-white rocks and wind-blown pinon trees. The cry comes again through the air to me, more into my heart than my ears. I reach for my binoculars and focus on one of the birds. It is brown, not black, a burnished russet soaring. And the cry comes once more. It is more wild, more empty than anything I have ever known. The cry seems to me to be utterly without emotion, yet somehow made of pure yearning. How can something so free of feeling be so totally passionate? It is a cry of the absolute, a stark scream of truth, completely and purely wowed in the height, in the flight, in the all-consuming sky. I follow the bird's movement through the binoculars. It handles the thin air, the mountain breeze flawlessly. There is neither mastery nor defeat, just the simple piercing perfection of utterly straight wings and clean air and the sharp cry of being alive. I want so desperately to cry that way myself, to shriek out my own truth into the endless emptiness, to shout out my longing, my nameless passion in the same simple, totally complete way. I want my soul sound to fly out against the mesa walls like that bird's cry. But it is unutterable for me, caught within the walls of my chest, inexpressible. Something distinctly human in me, something civilized, keeps my cry inside. And then the eagle cries again, and I think, in the manner of thinking that is without thoughts really forming, that the great bird is crying for me, not crying in sympathy with me or compassion for me, but crying in my stead because I cannot. In this moment, the eagle's call is an intercession for me, a standing in my place, an expression of my simple aliveness, made possible in a freedom that I do not possess, in eagle freedom. I know why this is a holy bird, a sacred creature, for I suddenly feel an earth-deep need for this eagle to cry out my soul, to sing my utmost prayer in the heights of emptiness. My prayer then becomes suddenly real, very intimate, very direct, and it is a prayer of gratitude for the eagle who sings my prayer. So I'm gonna leave, it's about 3:25, we have 5 minutes left, and I wanna do a little exercise before ending this, but this way we can start off at bald eagles next time. But I would just like to know what everybody's favorite bird is and why. So what is your favorite bird and why?
Hummingbirds, they're cute. All right.
Alan's is hummingbirds.
Great blue heron. Is my spiritual bird.
So I think I heard the great blue heron because it's like your spiritual bird. What do you think? Anybody else? Favorite bird or one of your favorite birds?
I've always liked surfing.
Go with the that pileated woodpecker. I've seen them several times when we were living back in New York. We'd go out cross country skiing and they'd be up in the trees and they're just so majestic.
So you could really relate to his section.
Oh, yeah. That was.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. Yep. Anybody else? Favorite bird?
I think a crow. They're smart.
they're very sacred to many indigenous peoples, especially the Lakota Sioux. The crow's eyes, and the crow and the raven both, like their eyes, the way that they interconnect with other crows or ravens. So that's very interesting. Yeah.
I took a online class with Cornell Lab of Ornithology about the crow, and it's very interesting. Their family culture, their ability to recognize faces. I don't think I finished it. I think I have another chapter or two to go. I have to go back.
Yeah, that's right. They have the ability to recognize faces. Who are the? I was just before when he was talking about the woodpecker, I was thinking of Woody Woodpecker, but also there was Heckle and Jekyll.
Oh.
That's old school. I'm telling you, that's old school stuff right there.
So a friend here and I were walking by Green Lake, and she is from Liechtenstein, and she calls them crows. And we sat on a bench, and there was a crow up in the tree, and it was just giving us heck. And I looked up and I said, "You stop that. It isn't my fault. It's her fault." And he pooped on her head. Oh, I felt just terrible.
That is funny.
Now that is a talent to get a bird to poop on somebody else's head.
Very good. They're always harassing the eagles. When we walk around Green Lake, there's a pair that lately have been hanging out in a big, very tall pine down around 65th Street. And the crows were just, there were about 3 of them, just constantly flying past, dive bombing. I don't know what, they're always, but whenever other places I've seen the eagles, and you can tell it's an eagle there because the crows are hanging around and giving them.
Yeah, they're kind of like the court jesters of the bird kingdom. I like them though. I love birds. I mean, they're really fascinating creatures. I don't know why ever since I was growing up in North Jersey, probably because it was my grandfather's favorite bird, but I've always loved cardinals.
Oh yeah. Did you ever see a black-headed cardinal?
Only one time. Only once, and I was amazed. Like,
I had them a couple of times back up in Ithaca, and I called the lab and I said, "What's wrong with?" He said, "Oh, sometimes they just don't get their crown. Don't worry about it. They'll be fine." I said, "Okay." They would hang out. And there's also the red-bellied woodpecker that has horizontal stripes. That was a favorite of mine. He would come all winter long.
Huh. Yeah, it's so great. All the different places that I live have different birds, so you get to see a lot of different varietals. But my mom's favorite bird is actually the great blue heron as well, so she's always loved that bird.
It's beautiful, but it has the most awful call.
It's amazing when I was lucky at one college that I taught at in Florida, sandhill cranes, same pair of sandhill cranes for the 4 years that I taught there came to do their mating dance there. And so I would drive in to teach my class, and I would always have to stop to watch them doing their mating dance in the middle of the field. It was amazing. Yeah, they could boogie.
All right, I'm going to stop the recording.